What's going on, YouTube? Welcome to Knives of the Round Table. And today we're going to be talking about the 5 knives that make me happy. And I decided to make this my first ever video on YouTube because look, I have many more knives than I need, right, for utility purposes. I just enjoy collecting them just like people collect baseball cards or refrigerator magnets. But I like having them, displaying them, fidgeting with them, admiring them, and most of all being part of the knife community, which is just great. Now, whittling it down to just 5 knives was really hard because to some extent every knife in my collection brings me a certain amount of joy. That's why they're there. But this is just an example of a knife that I had to exclude from the list. This is the Winkler General, but it's a knife that I really like, but it is not part of the list. It's just a stand-in for everything that we're going to talk about. So the first knife we're going to talk about is the CKF Evo 2.0. Now, when I started collecting knives, the Evo 1.0 had already come out. It was long gone by the time I started collecting knives. But when I looked at it, I thought, man, that design, the grind of the blade, the shape, I thought the Rodman design had done a really good job with it. But they were gone. And then when I went looking, the 2.0 pre-order had already happened. So I was sort of out of luck there too. But Custom Knife Factory said that they were going to do a drop of whatever excess production they did from the pre-order. So I followed them on Instagram and I signed up for the newsletter, and I managed to get in on the drop of the Evo 2.0. And I'm so glad that I did, because it's the first time that I ever got in on a drop, and this is probably a good one to make your first, because you know, they're expensive knives, but they're also kind of rare. There's not a lot of them. So being able to get this one with its unique design, with the quality of Custom Knife Factory, and with the finger guillotine action that this one has, is just incredible. And it's one of the ones that make me really happy to have in my collection. Now, up next is the Curtis F3 in the compound grind with a damascene steel blade. Now, this knife right here is the first time ever that I dipped my toes into the custom knife world. I generally prefer production knives. I think there's a lot more value and in a lot of cases more quality there. But this one, the lines of the F3 have always really appealed to me. And this one in particular with the damascene steel blade, I saw it on the secondary market and I had to pull the trigger on it. I like, you know, the oversized pivot that also acts as an over travel stop, the damascene steel blade that you can see in the spine. It's just a very nice knife, and the action deploying it. Now, it has a huge flipper tab, so if that's a thing for you, don't get this one, but deploying it, oh, it's just so good. Do you remember the old X-Men comic books where, you know, the Wolverine, whenever he deploys his claws, it said snicked? Okay, that's it. Snicked. It's so good. The deployment action on a Curtis is the best I've ever felt out of all the knives in my collection. And just sitting there, flipping it, it just brings me a tremendous amount of happiness and joy. Now, I do have the F3 in the medium size, which is a better handle size for me ergonomically. But to just fidget, and as far as happiness goes, not utilitarian purposes, the F3 compact in damascene steel is just an incredible knife to have. Now, up next, we're gonna talk about this little guy, and this is the Coke Tools Warhawk. Oh yeah. You know those little dogs, you know, that look fierce, you know, that are barking at the big Rottweiler. You're thinking, man, if that Rottweiler wants a piece of you, he's gonna swallow you whole. Okay, that's kind of what this is. Okay, it's more of a chunk of metal with a little blade than anything else. But look at the grinds. I mean, the grinds on this is just incredible. The Damascus, I think it's Chad Nichols Damascus, with a titanium scales and the Star Wars Empire icon on it. It is just such a cool little knife. If it can be even be called a knife, it's just so cool. And even though it's probably not, doesn't serve any utilitarian purpose, right? I mean, maybe opening packages and that kind of stuff, but the ergonomics, I mean, it's not even a 2-finger grip. I mean, it's a 1-finger grip, if at all. But just the having it and unwiring it. I mean, the action is pretty bad too, right? Because it's a slip joint or whatever it's called. But just having it in my collection, it brings me an insane amount of joy. So that's the Coke Tools Warhawk. Now, up next, we're gonna talk Shirogorov. This particular version is the Shirogorov F3 and S. And when you start collecting knives, or when I started collecting knives, you start watching videos and start researching and hearing and being part of the community. And what happens is that you start to hear these names, right? The Chris Rivsabenza, the Hinderer XM18, the Grimsmo Norseman, and Shirogorov. And they're spoken of as mythological beings, right? As legends. And you don't know what they're talking about until you get one of these things in your hand. But of all of those, the one that surprised me the most was the Shirogorov knives. I'm usually not a big liner lock guy, but this one, the liners are so thick that it's probably better to say that it is a frame lock with overlays than it is a liner lock. The build quality, the action on these things are so good that it's hard to put into words until you get one in your hand. Because you see, they tell you it's a titanium liner lock with carbon fiber scales and an M3 blade, right? And if I give you those specs, you can probably think of about a dozen knives that match those specs, right? But I gotta tell you, not all carbon fibers are created equal, and this one just shimmers and glows and has depth to it. And it is contoured milled. I don't know if you can tell that. It's contoured milled, and it has this milling pattern and some divots here and here, so that it just locks into your hand and it feels so good. The ergonomics are phenomenal on it. The action is everything you've ever heard of, and I think that the F3NS is probably the best knife in my collection. I think that if I had to pick quality, action, ergonomics, materials, fit and finish, everything, if I had to pick the best one in my collection, it'd probably be the Shirogorov F3NS. Now, finally, the knife that brings me the most joy in my collection, and that's the Hinderer XM18. But it's not just any Hinderer XM18. Rick Hinderer comes up with some special editions, and one of the special editions that he comes up with is this one. This is the Containment Series version of the knife. And what he does, I think he's been doing it since 2016, maybe earlier than that, but I haven't seen any earlier than 2016. But he does a couple of the Containment Series a year. Now for 2020, I'll remember it always as the year of COVID, right? I mean, it was the pandemic raging and all that stuff, and I'll remember it that way. And the fact that I managed to get the Containment Series for the year 2020 with a mask, with a biohazard, it just seems so fitting. Now I got this on the secondary market, and the guy who sold it to me, he he had this bead on for it already, and the pocket clip. Now I managed to get the handle nuts and the COVID filler tab, and the titanium scale on the other side. But see, it's having this knife, first, an XM18 is just an incredible knife to begin with. It's just one of the iconic knives. The action, as you can see, is crazy good. The ergonomics are phenomenal. But the containment series, even within the containment series, I've seen a lot of the containment ones, and the color scheme, the symbol, because they're not all the same. I think each one of them is unique, but this specific version of it, with the blue on the bronze combination, I think it's one of the best combinations out there. So I think if I had to, if I came on hard times, I had to get rid of every knife in my collection, I think this would probably be the last one to go, because it just brings me so much joy. It's so unique. And while I can probably, the Shiro F3NS, I think it's a better knife. But if I sold this one, I could probably get another one, from Shirogoro new. Now, if I sold this one, there's no way I'd be able to replace it. They're very scarce. I don't know how many he makes, but of the containment series 20, there's probably fewer than 10 out there. Now, if you got one, comment in the comment section and let me know. But I think there's very few of these out there. So, as far as knives that make me happy, this one makes me the happiest. Now, YouTube, it's my first video, so be gentle in the comment section. And if you enjoyed what we did here and you want to see more, like, subscribe, only if I've earned it. Otherwise, you can just keep watching my videos. Take care. Goodbye.